Welcome, my friends, to Utah Stories. So it's a very exciting day. We got our brand new beer issue of Utah Stories, craft brewery issue full of stories about craft brewing, how beer has revitalized communities along the Wasatch Front and in Utah all over. And a really special section on Helper, Utah. If you haven't experienced or gone to Helper, Utah, they just opened a really awesome new brewery there. And the town has been amazing to watch transform over the years. I started heading through Helper on my way to Moab about 10 years ago. Started to get to know these artists who had bought up these buildings that were former brothels. And these artists just started doing amazing jobs in both revitalizing the buildings and becoming incredible visual artists. And it was just been awesome to get to know them and then get to know the business owners. And my friend Angel's got the best tacos in Utah, just right off the road there in Helper. And I spent a couple days there with my kid, and we wrote this story. And it's just how these people who are in the guy we write about, his name is Gary and Mallory DeVincent. They are revitalizing these buildings with almost no prior knowledge on how to do it. They've just learned it over the last 6 years. And all these buildings that were formerly dilapidated, it was an old mining town, are now getting all this new life, and the whole town has just come alive, and it's so incredible to see. And so the farmers market organizer from the Park Silly Market, Kimberly, I'm not going to say her last name because I'm going to butcher it, but she decided to start a Saturday market in Helper, and now it's just this incredible venue for live music, for food trucks, for art all over the state of Utah, artists to come and show their amazing work. And now there's vendors, and it's just such a cool place to see, and I think you're going to like that story. And and it turned out to be an awesome issue. So if you want to get your hands on this, you can either pick it up for free along the Wasatch Front, but even better, enjoy the convenience of having it delivered right to your home by subscribing for just $3 a month. And that really helps us pay our writers. We pay our writers really well as our photographers and our illustrators. This awesome illustration this month by Young, I just think is incredible. It incorporates both beer and the flood. You can see this is like North Temple getting flooded with beer. We might have flooding coming up very soon here in May, as we still have the biggest snowpack we've ever had on record in Utah. We'll see you guys, and we'll and we're gonna sample some beer tomorrow on tomorrow's show. We're doing a show today and tomorrow. We're gonna sample some of the best craft beer in Utah right on the show. But coming up next, I wanted to talk about where we are at with our homeless and housing coverage. If you've been following this show, you might know that we've been asking the questions about what we can do to solve our major housing scarcity problem here in Utah. There's no more affordable housing anywhere. I mean, even in this little town, Helper, Utah, houses are going for about $300,000. There's just no affordable housing. There's fewer and fewer places for people to live affordably, especially lower middle class people. And so what do we do to solve this huge problem? And what do we also do to solve the homeless problem? We're seeing, despite the state spending on homelessness anywhere from $200 to $300 million per year, that estimate was given to me by James Buchanan of the Pioneer Park Coalition, who also was a state auditor for 20 years. The reason why it's such a big number and there's so much gap between the $200 and $300 million is there's so many ancillary services around homelessness. Like a lot of people point out, if you just examine the amount of homeless people that end up in emergency rooms in hospitals due to suffering some kind of trauma, that's a huge expense. If you look at the ancillary services of EMTs and 911 calls and police and jails and getting people off of drugs, it's just a giant number. And the number of people who are actually homeless, don't have a home to call their own, is about 7,000 people. So if you divide, 7,000 people into 300,000, it's about $90,000 per individual. And so our contention is on this program, we could be doing better. I'm sure we can be doing better with the $90,000 allocated per homeless individual. And so today on the program, we have a really special guest. She has proven that we can do better because she started a homeless resource center called Switchpoint. And she started the initial center in St. George, and then she opened one at the airport. Now she has several other businesses that are associated with helping people who are on the margins get off the streets, get into work, get into productive roles in society. And her name is Carol Hollowell. She's given TED Talks on the subject of homelessness. She's really kind of spearheading a whole new way in that we both give the homeless more dignity, but also have strings attached to helping them, develop into productive roles. Because I think one of the biggest problems we've discovered through this program and our research is that the current housing first model, the way it's being implemented, without requiring people to actually work, and also in many ways incentivizing disabilities and chronic homelessness, that is just not working. If you look at the homeless resource centers scattered throughout the Wasatch Front, just a little recap on what we've done here in Salt Lake County. We demolished our 1,000-bed homeless shelter that was near Pioneer Park, hoping to clean up that neighborhood, make it a better area for development projects. And then we built 4 more homeless resource centers and scattered them out a little bit. Those resource centers have not improved the communities that they operate in. The neighborhoods around those resource centers have deteriorated. If you look at the Ballpark neighborhood in particular, where the Gail Miller Resource Center is, that neighborhood has severely deteriorated, where there's crime and murders. It's just gotten much worse than it ever was. The Salt Lake Bees decided they're moving out of that neighborhood now. And it's just every single area around these resource centers and the permanent supportive housing has really severely deteriorated. And that's because, according to the manager of the Magnolia Apartments, who went on record with us, but anonymously, everybody in that facility, according to her, is using drugs. Everybody, because they don't need to work. There's no strings attached. They're getting a free apartment. And so what are they going to do all day besides push and traffic drugs, use drugs? There's sex trafficking going on, according to her, as well. And so we're looking for better models. I think that's the key here. What the status quo is, it's not working. We're following the California model. We're following Seattle's model. We're following Portland's model. And those models are failed. So we've got to do something better here in Utah. And that's what today's episode is all about, as well as tomorrow's. Tomorrow's episode, we're talking to Joseph Grenny, who spearheaded the Other Side Academy initiation here in Utah and is opening a tiny home village with his son Samuel Grenny and David Droscher, who's the executive director of the Other Side Academy. And it's it's a tiny home village that provides, it's under the permanent supportive housing first model, but they are, I believe, doing things quite a bit differently. And he's going to come on tomorrow to talk about that. But I want to have Carol on in the next few minutes. And so we're going to take a little break. And when we get back, it's going to be Carol Hollowell from Switchpoint. We'll see you in a few. All right, we are back with Carol Hollowell from Switchpoint. We've got a lot to talk about.
Oh boy, do we!
Yeah,
it's been a couple years, maybe only one.
I think it's only been one.
Well, I don't like to, let moss grow under my feet.
Yeah. So you've opened a coffee shop, a doggy daycare.
Doggy daycare we did quite a while ago. That was like in 2016.
Oh, okay.
You just didn't know about it, but
I just didn't know about it.
But we did open up a 24/7 childcare center last June and an aeroponic garden that grows 100,000 plants a year. That's been new since I talked to you last.
Wow.
Well, and 2 housing projects.
Where are these located?
The garden. Okay, so the garden's in St. George on our shelter campus. Our coffee roastery, so it's not a shop, it's a coffee roastery, and we ship nationwide. So switchpointcoffeeco.org, order online, amazing coffee, and that's in St. George as well. All of our opportunities that we do in businesses, micro enterprises, helps us, make money and unrestricted money that we can do with what we need to, but it also then helps us employ people that need to learn some job skills. So it's a win-win.
And I think that is the key difference between what you're doing, what our guest tomorrow, Joseph Grenny, is doing. Why not put these people to work?
Exactly.
It's like you give them a free apartment, and then you basically tell them under our current model, if you get a good job and you're gainfully employed, you might get kicked out.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
It really doesn't. The other big things that we did since the last time we talked is we started purchasing older hotels and then converting them into studio apartments. And our 2 big ones here in Salt Lake have collectively, they will have housed over 250 people right off the streets. And we're focusing right now in Salt Lake on the seniors and veterans because, to me, they're the most vulnerable. And, I kind of get on a soapbox and sometimes I, drop a lot of F-bombs on it because it really makes me disgusted to think, here's people that have an income. It's not very big. It's Social Security, maybe disability, but they can't afford to live anywhere. So where's that deeply affordable housing? And you did a great, show back in March on affordable housing. But this deeply affordable is $450 a month rent, and it includes everything. It includes their utilities, their cable, their internet, and that allows somebody who's making less than $800 a month. They're sustainable.
And that's in Salt Lake.
That's in Salt Lake. So both of them are on North Temple, and we'll open Monday. We're opening up that second one to move another 100 people in. So
what great timing.
Yeah.
They're closing the overflow shelters.
We closed overflow last week, so I've done a lot of moving in the last couple weeks. So we shut down the Mill Creek overflow that we were operating, and then a lot of those same clients will be moving into Fair Park.
Oh, that's great!
Yeah.
Wow, what great news!
Yeah.
So. Is the state now giving you a lot more autonomy and control over your own policies, or are they coming in and telling you how you got to do it?
There's still a lot of regulation, for sure, that best practices, and that has air quotes around that, best practices that come from our federal government that are imposed upon providers, right? And that's a flow through to the states. And it gets a little discouraging. Okay, no, it gets a lot discouraging because I think a lot of times these policies are made with people who've never done boots on ground. Yeah. They've actually never got their fingers dirty, right? And so it's discouraging to me because I'm thinking that's like the housing first. It doesn't work if you don't provide the supportive services that go with it, if there's not accountability. I think the 2 big things that us and the Other Side Academy do really well is that opportunity with accountability. And all of us, if you're a parent, all of us work better, especially our kids, right, with accountability and structure. They know what to expect, and so they start to behave better. When there is chaos, what do we see? We see San Francisco. We see Portland, Oregon. Any of these big cities have completely lost control over their homeless because there's been entitlement and absolutely zero accountability.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get to the bottom of why there is no accountability, why it seems that they want to just put people in these horrible, destructive environments. Yeah. I mean, one of the most basic things you kind of learn growing up is idleness is the devil's playground. And to just force people to take an apartment but then not be able to really work
Right.
and not be able to feel the dignity of having a paycheck that's their own, to know that their disability is what enables them to have a paycheck. That seems like an absolutely losing model.
Yeah, I think it's losing all the way around. One thing that I think Switchpoint does really well is we say we want to create this culture. And the culture, and it's included in every one of our facilities, right? And it doesn't matter if it's one of our businesses, our housing, or our shelters. That culture is we have kinship, kindness, connection, self-worth, and self-reliance. And it goes in that order, right? So they can't become self-reliant unless we kind of tackled those first four. And to me, when you really look at what does that mean, it means that they start to feel proud of where they live and that they actually have a community and a friendship group around them. And man, they don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
And we see it over and over again where they keep the grounds clean. They police themselves. They're keeping people, hey, you drop that cigarette butt, you pick it up, right? So I'm going to pound you, right? I mean, they're doing that, and it's not the staff that's having to,
they have
browbeat.
ownership.
They have
over
ownership.
the
You're
community.
right,
Yeah.
right? And we do that in our own neighborhoods, right? It's like, who wants the trashy neighbor next door, right?
Yeah.
So they do that to themselves.
I want to show a clip to you. I was out today on the Jordan River. I just love doing these interviews. I go out and talk to these people who are homeless and ask them, what is the solution? What do you need? What are you lacking in? Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised to hear what they have to say. It's never the same answer. It's never food. Mm-hmm. It's never, I need more blankets or clothes. It's usually things like, I need hand sanitizer. Well, why would you need that? Because that's what they burn to keep warm in the winter. Mm-hmm. And but I talked to these two people today, and they had this guy was standing out there with his shirt off, big guy. And at first I was a little intimidated. I was like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, let me put my shirt on. I want to talk to you. And I think that the woman who was there, I'm going to show you this in a minute. She was really sheepish and didn't want to talk at first. But after I started talking to him, he started talking to me. Is this about ready? Oh, okay. But what I've really gathered from all of these interviews is that the community is actually what's keeping them on the street. Mm-hmm. They find people that care about them.
That's right.
That have their back, that actually know each other's names. They figure out what they can do to help each other.
Right.
And to say, oh, no, you got to get off the street and get into an apartment, that's kicking them out of the community that they know.
Right.
And to say you got to get, like, for example, I think it's an excellent program in theory, like Advantage Services, you can go get an Amazon warehouse fulfillment job. But to be kicked out of your little community and then be working in a giant warehouse where you're treated like a robot going and getting products, I just
lonely.
think, yeah, it's lonely, it's dehumanizing, and they're out there surviving, taking care of each other.
Right.
And I think that's the aspect that I feel is really missing in our homeless resource centers along the Wasatch Front, that our leaders aren't really understanding.
And we heard that over and over again when we've operated the overflows. And that's our number one need as human beings, is love and connection, right? Mm-hmm. And so by creating these communities, not scattered sites to where you put, 3 previously homeless into an apartment complex, everybody else is market rate, they're still then shunned or don't feel like they belong. When we put veterans together, oh man, they flock and they tell war stories all day and everybody's happy, right? Because they feel like they belong to a certain tribe. And we all want that tribe.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, and a lot of these people have come from broken families. And if you don't have a family, friends become all that more important. Mm-hmm. And are we okay? Oh, awesome. I want to describe a guy who went by the name of Leo. His family's from Tonga and New Zealand. And I said, how did you get out here? And you could show it now, Troy. And this is the beautiful Jordan River today. And he said, well, I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'm out here. My friends were out here before I was. And then I was just coming to visit my friends. And the next thing I know, I'm out here too. and obviously he had his family connections, his best friends were out here. He was trying to do everything he could to help them, and that became more of his full-time job until he was out there living there himself. And he was, the woman who was with him said, this guy is helping everybody. He's going around asking who needs water, who needs food. He's going and delivering it because he's a big, strong, healthy guy, and it seems like that's him, Leo. But this is, I believe she said her name was Vanessa, and she just got kicked out of her mom's house, and she's out here just trying to survive. And
do you want me to play the audio?
Yeah, can we hear it?
Yeah.
And so in the 5 months you've been out here, has a caseworker come to you, tried to help give you ideas of the best way to get out?
What do you mean the best way to get out?
I mean, like, whether it's rapid rehousing or the women's shelter or...
Have you been to the shelters before? That's probably why some of these people don't want to go to the shelters.
You have been or haven't?
I've been there. I've been to a shelter before.
What was it like?
Downtown, go visit them. You're asking the wrong person. Go down there and interview them.
I have.
And so, what did they say?
Like, I heard there's mentally ill ladies there screaming out in the middle of the night.
It's traumatizing. They've probably been through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And it's for a person to say mentally ill all the time, people get defensive like that. I mean...
Well, I don't know what it is but I've talked to other people who are living out here, and they say that if you go into the Gail Miller Resource Center or the Gerald E. King Center, there's just people screaming out in the middle of the night who have night terrors, and
Well, we do.
and so that's why I use the word mentally ill. I don't know if that you cry out in the middle of
Have
the
you
night.
ever had a night terror? Like nightmare? Have you ever been
So I'll pause it there because it seems to me one of the biggest problems is that they have a one-size-fits-all solution, which is anybody who doesn't have housing, put in a homeless resource center and a shelter. And some of these people are really mentally ill, and they're screaming out at night, and they're that's scamps, and they're making it so nobody can sleep. And it seems like if you don't segregate the populations among their problems or the solutions the tracks that they need to get on, how are you going to ever really help everybody? It seems
Right.
impossible.
It does. And I think, when you're in big cities and you're trying to deal with, hundreds at a time, it makes it even harder, right? I really think that there should be a lot more help on the mental illness side, where we have shelters and housing that is only for that, because you're dealing with so much more trauma, and then that trauma can trigger a mental illness cycle. So we are lacking big time, in our state. And I think actually the whole nation's homeless system is lacking in this mental illness help. Back in the 80s when they disbanded all of the institutions, right? And okay, can't have that anymore. One flew over the cuckoo's nest all over, right? What happened to them? They were all let out to the streets. And how frustrating and sick and wrong was that? They thought they were doing the right thing, but there were no resources. It was a broken system. Yes, I agree with how it was. But now you have these people with severe mental illness who now are not getting their meds. They're not getting any support. They're being taken advantage of. They're being harmed, significantly harmed. And it just exploded our homeless population in the United States. That's when it became a crisis moment.
Yeah.
Right?
So in terms of how to best allocate resources, do you think that's really the biggest area where we're truly just not funding enough?
I don't know if it's the biggest area. I'll speak to two parts to that. Number one is there's not enough affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. I'm not talking about the 60 to 80% AMI, which is our working class people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about, people who are living on a fixed income. And as they're getting priced out, in the last 5 years, you've seen that, our homeless numbers have gone off the chart. Because now you're dealing with a whole new population, like our seniors, who've never been homeless before, because they've been able to pay that little rent. And now, if they can't pay the rent, My oldest was 92 that came in to our Point facility this year. 92 years old,
Wow.
had never been homeless in his life, did not know how to manage the street, couldn't figure out how to find the homeless shelter. I mean, he was scared to death. And can you imagine that, being 92 years old? Our average age there right now is 73.
Wow.
And so when you look at that, that's, to me, if we can't solve that, I went last year and knocked on 10 hotel owners' doors and said, will you sell this to me? Knock, knock. Will you sell this to me? I got 10 under contract,
Wow, no kidding.
but I had to go find 164 million. No one would pony it up, right? And so when you look at that, that ability to say, we could have taken off 1,000 people before winter overflow if the money would have been put into that, where people can pay their own rent, operation costs are low, you can't build new construction for the price of renovating an older hotel. I mean, it's vastly different, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit cheaper. So when you look at it that way, it's like, that to me is number one. It's an easy way to fix 1,000 people in Salt Lake County out of homelessness. And they're happy and they're thriving, and we're proving it over and over again, right?
But you can never build that with the current construction costs that are...
You can't build that new with current construction. Yeah, no. So, I mean, look at the Magnolia, right, on how much that cost. You know, you're looking at $300,000 a door versus I can do something between $92,000 to $120,000 a door, you know, depending on the hotel, right?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that, where it doesn't have to be subsidized by vouchers or by government funding, where people can actually feel dignified and they're saying, here's my rent and I'm paying it every month, your center changes because people feel like they're empowered and they become self-reliant, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's number one. Like, that's the biggest crisis we're seeing right now, is the lack of deeply affordable housing for those that cannot fit into that middle class range. Then the second piece of that would be the mental health housing. And so which one goes first? I don't know. I mean, for me, if you can handle something in a large swath, we're trying to do a mission-related investment raise right now of $200 million, because fine, if I can't get it from, states, cities, and counties, let's go after, individuals, philanthropists in the state that want to solve a problem. Let's solve it.
Yeah.
And it can't be because we're scared that now our industry as providers, I want to go, I solved it, so now I can do something else within that industry. I'm providing the service maybe, but I don't have to stay as a homeless shelter. If I could solve homelessness, right, then we don't need as many shelters.
Yeah.
But we could then focus on the services, the wraparound support services that are needed in deeply affordable housing.
Yeah. So are your ideas starting to trickle into the entities that operate the shelters and resource centers and permanent supportive housing here?
I would say no. We've been asked to come into different counties, so now we're in Tooele County. We're going to launch into Davis County. We're in Washington County, of course.
What is the roadblock? Why is that not happening? Because I just look at the Wendell Apartments, the Palmer Court, and it's just like the neighborhoods around those facilities are totally deteriorating, and Magnolia. And it's not only a homeless problem anymore. It's like all the residents who live around there, they're watching their property values plummet.
Right.
They're watching drug trafficking. They don't feel safe anymore in their neighborhoods. It just seems like this is a huge problem.
Right. I would say without the accountability piece, that's exactly what you're getting. And we're seeing that not just in Salt Lake, but in cities across the United States, right? Where these housing projects are turning into disasters, absolute disasters. If you drive past the Point, you're not going to know that it's deeply affordable housing. Northrop Grumman is our neighbor, and they love us. We just had a Meet Your Neighbor activity a couple weeks ago. And, we had about 60, 70 people show up for it that are in our neighborhood, but you'll never find cigarette butts on the ground. There's no needles. There's not trash. They're taking care of that. And so our neighbors like us, right? We don't feel like we're a bad asset to them. We're better than what it was before, because now you don't see people camping under the overpass on 215, before they get to us.
And you're telling people who enter your facility, if you can work, then do, and you're not going to be punished, correct?
Correct. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We right now have over 30 people that work with us in the facility that live there. And they love wearing their orange lanyard that says, the Point, right? It makes them feel like they're in special and in charge, right? So some of them are on Easter Sills, which is a program that our state runs that's for 55 and older, and they're on disability. So they can work up to 25 hours a week and get paid through a state program. And then the rest of them are 1099s, where they can help in our kitchen, they can be a shuttle van driver, they can housekeeping, janitorial, mechanic, so they help us. And again, that creates this ownership, this buy-in of having a really robust neighborhood.
But what I don't get is you got a model. It's working. You're not deteriorating neighborhoods. Why can't they just adopt that?
I think part of it is competition, right? It's a territorial feeling. And truly, I wish that we could change our state model of how we all apply for grants. So in the homeless system, we all apply for grants to run our shelters or to run our soup kitchens or to run our pantries, and it's a competitive process. The problem with that is that if you have a small community, let's take Iron County or Moab, they have very few staff, and that staff has to do everything, and they might not be a very good grant writer, so they're not going to maybe get as much. Or you'll have some that are super big, and they'll have a good team that's writing these grants, so they get the bulk of it. So there's no parity. And if I could say anything about our state process, it's the lack of parity. Because I can get, if I have an 84-bed shelter right now down in St. George, and we're getting $16 a bed, if you will, with our state grant money, and Salt Lake gets 62, and Ogden gets 6.
Is that per day? Or?
Yeah, so it kind of is, how do you run an operation when we have all the same requirements of licensing to run shelters, but nobody's getting the same dollars?
Oh, I see.
Which is why Switchpoint said, you know what, we can't live like this. We can't fulfill our mission and help people launch out of here and be successful unless we start creating our own money, because I don't want to be 100% reliant on state and federal funding. So, hence the coffee shop. If I can, make a couple $1 million a year off of my Switchpoint coffee company, I wouldn't take state money anymore, because then I can say, this is our best practice. This is how we're seeing the success, and we're going to do it this way. And we're actually launching our co-op nationwide this June, so in a couple more months. And so we'll be taking that model across the nation. We have a lot of communities that are calling us saying, hey, I saw what you guys are doing. Will you teach us how to run a doggy daycare, or how to do an aeroponic garden, or we need those extra dollars, and we want to figure out how to be self-reliant too. So, what you've heard is you can't be a prophet in your own land, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's like you have people with able bodies and able minds to whatever degree they are able, and to say to them, oh, you are here because you have a disability. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We had on the program a couple of months ago a man by the name of Paul Webster.
Oh, yeah. I know
Paul?
Uh-huh.
And he worked under Ben Carson for Housing and Urban Development. And he said the biggest problem is that the way the system is set up, just the way the mechanism is in place, is if you have a disability, you're labeled with a disability, you're going to get the most reward, and you're going to get the highest number of points to get that permanent supportive housing.
That's right.
And then if for some reason your disability no longer exists and you no longer have that designation, there goes your benefits.
That's right.
That's just such a counterproductive model to the human spirit.
Right.
And that is the national standard.
It's
for
our welfare
how we're
model,
doing it. Yeah.
which hasn't changed in 34 years. So our welfare model is built off of a ratio right now, a formula of when I was a kid, $2.85 an hour, and nothing's changed. So if you look at minimum wage now, so what it has done is incentivized entire generations now, right? So just in Utah, we have 4 generations of families that have been on welfare over and over, every generation, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at that, you make more money being on the welfare system than you do being employed.
Way
because you're too scared to get off. If you make $1 more in a job, right, you're going to hit that cliff effect, and you just lost all benefits. So whether it was Medicaid or child care vouchers or subsidies, food stamps, you're just going, I'm better off if I just do nothing and collect my $1,500 a month through the welfare system than I am to actually try and go and work, because I'm penalized and I know I can't make it on my $16 an hour.
Yeah.
People can't even make it at $20 an hour if they're
No.
trying to raise a family, right?
And so it seems to me this could be the biggest challenge of the 21st century.
Yeah.
The worst neighborhoods around all our communities in the United States are the ones where people are getting the most amount of government support. And so how do you possibly wean people off of these checks and get them into productive roles in society again?
Yeah. Take away the entitlement. I think that, by creating cultures within those neighborhoods where people want to thrive instead of just surviving, that's where we see it changing, right? I'll give a quick story on, I met a gal on the street. Rocky Anderson had said, hey, I know of a homeless lady. She's older. She's been living on the streets. I don't think she'll make it this winter. It's going to be a bad one. Can you come and visit with her? And so I did. Her name was Petey. She was super smiley and kind. But I said, oh, man, you're right. She's not going to make it either, right? So we actually had one of our residents pass away, which is very common in an older, frail population, right? So I said, I have an opening. And with her scores on vulnerability, she should be able to move in. And she's been homeless for a couple years now during COVID. She'd been homeless the entire COVID when she lost her job.
Wow.
So at 65, she moves in, has a lot of disabling conditions, but doesn't consider herself disabled. She still wants to work. Petey now is the queen bee of the point. And when I say that, she is the party animal. She gets everybody together. She's putting in gardens. She's getting other people to help her put in the gardens. She's holding these events at night to get people rah-rah. She's making sure that people, when we get these free tickets from ShareTix, hey, you want to go to the opera? You've never been there? Let's go. So you see this total different mentality that happens when people get out of that survival mode into a thriving mode. And so it changes that homeless, and now she's telling other people who have been so shelter resistant, hey, go sign up, get on the waiting list, right? Because this is a way better way to live. Trust me. And so she's just beating this drum, right? So we've got, over 400 people on this waiting list that are over the age of 65.
Wow.
That's what I'm
Jeez.
saying. If we could,
So you
anyone
got this
listening, show me the
huge
money.
demand.
Come on, we could do this. We could really seriously solve a major chunk of this homelessness in Salt Lake County if we could open up more deeply affordable housing and create these amazing, vibrant communities where they feel like it's their place.
And so when we look at the bigger picture of housing scarcity, housing affordability, your primary focus is on the senior population. We've talked to a lot of young people, and I'm trying to kind of get a handle on it, but it seems like it's a variety of factors. And do you work with that population much as well?
Sure. Yeah, in our shelters for sure.
Yeah, you get sort of this like this sort of neo-capitalist, anti-corporate type person who just really is
Not trusting.
They don't trust anything at all. They think if they take a job at a place like Walmart, then they're contributing to a system which they are disenfranchised. They want to disenfranchise themselves from, and they just don't believe capitalism is the solution anymore. That something new needs to come about. And I keep hearing that, like, I'm homeless by choice. I hear that from young people quite a bit. I could go get a job. Are you kidding me? Sure I could. But I choose to camp here. What do you do to overcome this new kind of cultural revolution that is this anti-capitalist, anti-work ethic? It's
probably been the saddest thing I've seen this year. Certainly as we, are ramping up to staff and you see this it's like despair. It's like this whole
It's
new
like nihilism,
mood.
despair.
Yes,
I don't care.
Yeah, and I have 4 sons that are aged, 33 to 26. And I think, man, I've all made them work really hard with me and doing a lot of volunteering throughout their whole lives, right? So I don't see that despair in them. But what I see in a lot of their peers even is they have a lot of anxiety. Even if they were in college, they're dropping out in large numbers. They might have had a great job, but then they quit and they move back home with the parent, even if they're 28. But it's just this lack of like, if this was what our world is, I don't want to be here. And that's a really scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah. And this idea, this guy, these people I talked to for 30 minutes, and I'll put the whole interview up on YouTube. But he's like, he's like a guy with a smile on his face, and he's out here because he likes the community and helping people. But he says, I just get the idea. So many people have just sort of checked out, and they've given up, and so they're giving their bodies these horrible drugs. They're getting high all day. They're just not
numbing. They're just numbing.
Yeah, they're just numbing themselves, and he's like, it's like a clock winding down. They're just kind of waiting to die.
Yeah.
And it seems like this this kind of moral depravity kind of goes along with that, and this sense of nothing is worthwhile. And how do you rekindle the spirit in Americans who are crossing the borders, for example, right now to get here just to work hard and earn a paycheck? How do we get over this morass we're in, it seems?
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot because I don't know. My generation, I feel like we were in that, that baby boomer stage. Man, we knew we needed to step up to the plate and work really hard, right? Mm-hmm. And we were following our parents' footsteps. Is it some of our kids, that we raised as baby boomers were so kind of entitled and fed well and had everything they wanted? Is it too much, internet? Is it too much? What happened to this generation where they've been numb to their brain? Video games and YouTube. I mean, you're so addicted to social media.
Yeah, it's all the stimulus.
See, you got all the stimulus, and everybody else looks like they're having a great life, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the social media problems, and you look at the rate of suicides among young 20s and the teenagers. They feel like, my life's not that great. How come everybody else's life is? Well, it's not. It's just that's what they post. Yeah. Right? And so have we done ourselves with this AI kind of intelligence just this real huge disservice that could cripple us as a nation?
It seems really like a troubling trend pretty soon robots will do everything, so I won't have to work anyway, and I'm just wait for that universal basic income. And then I can just sit by this river all day and use drugs. It's just a strange world, and it's a strange sort of ethos that is not from the people who are immigrants. They're coming here for job opportunities, but it's like the third, fourth, fifth generation Americans who it seems like a lot of them also feel like this is not a good country. Like we're racist and we're homophobe, bigot, sexist, whatever.
Yeah, put any label on there you want. That's what we're our. Right.
And it's like, why are so many people wanting to come here and be here? And it's been challenging to talk to people like that, because you can't. I can't get through to them. Anything I say, they have something to say back to it.
Right.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and look at how do you delineate the role between what the government can do and what the people need to step up and do to solve this problem?
Yeah. How I look at it truly is I like having the ability to utilize our government, whether that's state, city, county, federal, to help purchase some of these facilities, right? We couldn't have done anything without that COVID money or the state, those sources I just named, because you can't keep rent at $450 unless it's debt free, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because you can't pay the mortgage on $450 a month rent. What it does do, though, for us is we say we want to guarantee this isn't just to build up anyone's individual pocket. It's a 501c3. But the role to me would be the government helps us do that, but then we sign a 50-year deed restriction with each city that we're in that says, for 50 years, I mean, I'll long be dead, but whoever is then running Switchpoint would say, this is staying deeply affordable for 50 years, which saves this population that we've been working so hard on. It can't get sold to another developer and then the rents get jacked up again. It's going to stay that way for 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal, right? So I think the role has to be more on a capital level and not an operational level. I think the problem has become when we lean on our tax dollars to operate nonprofits 100%, the burden becomes so great that we never can solve the problem because every year it just needs more and more and more money, right? And so if we can look at it that way and say, truly, if these nonprofits can become self-sustaining themselves and only use government dollars for that capital expenditure, we can solve the problem, because then within that own body, it's sustaining, and you're not doing a drain every year on the taxpayers. I mean, when you look at how much the state of Utah spent, on homelessness, it's a huge number, right? And every year they're asking for more, right? We have to go to the legislation and say, we need more because we didn't solve it. We didn't fix it. In fact, it's even bigger this year. Sorry, we missed it by $100 million.
Yeah, we had the state auditor on the program.
Oh yeah,
James B. Hennon, and he's been auditing homeless services, and he says we're up to almost $300 million if you count all the ancillary services and everything,
and housing,
and that accounts for 7,000 people, and Is that an accurate number, 7,000?
I'm
was
trying
a
to
year
remember.
ago.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago that he did that audit. But you're right. I mean, when
But
you
that's
look at that,
$90,000 per person. Like, we can't do better than we're doing.
Why are we not doing better than that?
Yeah, why isn't everybody in a luxury apartment?
Right, and what is really troubling is we're looking at this overflow problem year after year after year. And you come in and you house people from like a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then you kick everybody out the next morning, even if it's still a blizzard or snowing or cold or whatever. But then we start over again the next year. And to me, the millions of dollars that we're spending on that process itself, why are we not making that a permanent solution? Again, going back to, we could have, if we had the money and we bought the hotels and put people in where they're paying their own rent, you don't need the overflow, because we would have taken 1,000 people out of the system, and they could have then opened up shelter beds, right? It wouldn't have been at max capacity anymore, because those people that have dollars in the shelter, right, would have been able to say, me, I've got money, I want to go, right? And so to me, we're going at it backwards. We're always doing a Band-Aid approach instead of a permanent approach. Why do we keep looking so short term? Let's look long term. What's going to truly solve the problem?
Well, I think it's like you said, the current permanent supportive housing model, the housing first model, is you can't kick out people who have disabilities. And if their disability is they're a drug addict, how do you get them out? That was what Paul Webster told me is the big conundrum, because
it's a huge conundrum, and then they trash it, and they don't end up lasting anyways, right? And they cycle back into heavy drug use instead of maybe working on a path toward recovery. But there's no incentive for good behavior or societal, what we're all expected to do, right?
Yeah, becoming part of the community, the productive
becoming part
community.
of that community. But you have to have this thing within people to say, if you and I were both on the street and I'm homeless and I'm doing drugs, I get left alone. But if you're not and you are a provider, but you decide to shoot up, guess who gets arrested? You, the provider. So why is there different rules for a different set of people? It should be the exact same accountability if we're going to really change our systemic problem.
Right. Yeah. Do we have any comments or questions, Troy?
Yeah, I'm sorry you can't hear me, but yeah, there's a few. It's mostly just like kind of comments about like, put politicians, require them to be in a shelter for like 2 days, that kind of stuff. It's just like, things like that. But you can't hear me, so.
Yeah. You mentioned how the people, the policymakers in the state legislature, they really don't have an idea of what it is actually like to be homeless and to be in one of these resource centers. How do you bridge that gap between what they know and what they don't know? How do you help them drive better policy?
Yeah, I think that is the best practices need to be made by people who are dealing with it daily, right? I think that we've tried as a system to do a better job by involving the voice of the homeless or previously homeless on councils, on committees, on panels. I think we've done a better job, nationally at that, but it's still being driven by somebody who's an academic that says, I read this book, or I just went through some schooling and I think that this is the best practice. Everyone in the nation do it if you want HUD housing dollars, or everyone do it if you want homeless dollars. And it's like, have you been in the shelter? Because that's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
And so it's more of reaching out to our legislative body and saying, I'd like to invite you to come and spend the night. And if you really want to help us change this, get your hands dirty. I love it that Wayne Niederhauser has been serving for years. I think it's been 6 or 7 years, every Friday night with his wife down at a homeless camp. Same park, knows these people by name. I've been down there. I've seen him interact. He gets it. He's seen it. And he realizes that there's a problem, but he's one man. He can't do it by himself. He needs our Utah Homeless Council to understand it, and he needs our legislative body to understand it, that it's more than just saying, sure, let's throw more dollars at a shelter. It's truly, what's the long-term, outcome that we're expecting? And if it's to decrease the homeless numbers, you don't decrease homeless numbers by just building more shelters. You have to give them a home.
Yeah.
But there has to be accountability, else we're going to have, projects, all around the city and all around the county, with overrun.
Well, so it's like, I keep hearing from people, have you heard about the Scandinavian model of housing first? And they do, the housing first, and they've done it for a long time, and they're eliminating homelessness rather than watching the number go up. But they have strings attached to their housing.
That's right.
Their housing first is completely different than ours. And it's HUD's policy that they use this point system, and the more desperate you are, the more likely you're to get the housing, and then the less likely you are to get kicked out.
And there's no consequences.
Yeah.
Right?
None.
So you have this high scoring, but there's no consequences. You're not even required. In fact, we can't require them to meet with case management. And it's like, why am I as a provider working harder at your homelessness than you are?
Yeah.
I'm going to, put my effort to somebody who wants to get out of the problem, right? And that's that kind of that despair that you and I were talking about earlier. Is I have a lot of clients who, I'm ready, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you have some, especially on that younger end, that are going, no, I don't want your help, and I don't want you to tell me what to do. Well, then this isn't a model that is going to work for you, because we're going to link arms, and we're going to be doing this step by step. But if I'm running and you're going backwards, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, and I talk to the homeless people about case managers all the time, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I met one, and then we were going someplace, and then they quit, and then I got a new one, and then they quit, and then they're just like, no, this is not working. Yeah. And I think it's because these case managers, I think they're short right now, 300 of them, and it's just, and then the job turnover rate is so high. And in terms of what they say is lacking in the city facilities, that's it. They just say we're not providing the wraparound services because we don't have enough money to provide the caseworkers what they need to stay on the job. What do you say to that problem?
I think that a lot of it is an excuse, if I can be blunt, because we're not seeing that. Not in 3 different counties are we seeing that problem. More of it is, and the approach would be this, what do you need? I need you to tell me, because I haven't been in your situation. You tell me something today about you and what you want fixed. And we can have this little sushi menu, and it helps you check off, I don't have an ID, or I need a new food stamp card, or, I lost my birth certificate. Whatever you want to check off, or whatever, you tell me what your issues have been that have put you into homelessness or kept you into homelessness. If I can tackle one of those today, would you trust me? That different approach about saying to the client, you're in control. I need you to be in control of this situation.
Yeah.
Instead of it being pounded of, I'm the case manager and I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. It puts up this resistance, this wall of,
well, it's telling
you don't even know me.
You're saying tell them you want to be their servant, not their master. Yeah. That's a huge difference.
Huge difference. So we're coming at it from let's meet you where you're at. And let's see if we can tackle one thing. If it's I need a new birth certificate, you know what? Before we're done with this meeting, let's order it. That takes nothing. That's a 5-minute deal.
Really?
And for that, you walked out of there as a client going, hey, I got something done today, not let's meet again in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Right? So what it does for the staff side is it makes them feel like, man, we are getting some success here. and these clients are staying in shelter because they want to know what else I could get done for them. And if I go ask them now to go retrieve, XYZ, they do. Or if they need to go enroll on their GED and take their test downstairs, they do, because now they're feeling like we're a team.
Yeah.
It's not one-sided
that,
anymore.
I mean, that makes so much sense. And I've tried to have on this program the people who run Unsheltered Utah, housing, the road home, and they just won't come on. And I'm like, I'm not going to bite your head off. I know you got an incredibly tough job. I know that what's working is not working, but why not talk about it?
Right.
Why do you think they don't want to talk about it?
I don't think anyone really likes confrontation, right? And so if they feel that there's going to be a confrontational conversation, then it's not going to be had. I've had the same thing happen to me when, coming in new to Salt Lake County, right? But I look at it as, let's put our head down and just keep working.
Yeah.
And if we keep working and we keep helping people, because truly, it's not about me. It's not about you, right?
No,
it's
about
about
outcomes.
us helping people who can't do it all by themselves, but they need somebody else on the outside that says, I'm looking at it through a different lens. I think I can get this done. And to me, that's how we actually make some change.
So you say that you are all competing for scarce grant dollars from the state.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're getting a lot more than you are, and you're doing more with less. Is there a chance Switchpoint can take over some of these failing resource centers?
If they were grants that were up for renewal, or they call them RFIs, so a request, for funding. I don't see that happening in their near future, where Shelter the Homeless, who has those contracts for those 3 HRCs, I think that they are kind of in the trenches right now with those providers. Certainly, if the chance came up, we would write for it, and then it would be voted on. But in the meantime, we'll continue to just, create better systems and businesses that will support, so that we don't have to rely on another haircut from, state dollars. Fine. Buy more coffee. Switchpointcoffeeco.org.
Yeah. Get your doggy daycare done.
That's right.
Switchpoint.
That's right.
So looking in the future, 5-10 years down the road, we have even more migrants coming in. We have basically an open border. There's going to be even more housing scarcity, no doubt about it. I said on the intro to our previous issue that Utah's got an identity crisis. We live in the headquarters of the fastest growing church in the world, and it was discovered that they have $100 billion in a bank account. They're kind of fine for hiding it. And if you took one of those 100 billion, all of my ancestors were Mormons. So, I can say this. I feel like I can say this because they paid into tithing for 100 years or something like that. If you had $1 billion to spend on something to alleviate this housing and homeless crisis that we're in, how would you spend that money?
I would definitely spend it on the housing by creating and I think there needs to be different varieties, right? So tiny homes to vertical tiny homes, which is the hotel conversions, or just single family dwellings. But if you have to look at what's our average price a home now is like $500,000, it's insane. My kids will never move out of the basement, right? It's that crazy to where, how do you expect somebody that lives on a fixed income or on minimum wage or just barely is getting by, they'll never get into apartments or housing when we have this overinflated housing. Will it readjust itself like 2008? The problem is when it sprang back after 2008, it went crazy, and housing escalated all over, right, including Utah. And so it priced out even more people who had been okay, and now they're not okay. And so it's crazy to say this, but we have a lot of people in shelter who are making $3,000 a month, and they can't find anywhere to go.
Wow.
So because you have to have 3 times your income for rent, or if you have kids, you can't find any place that can rent to you that will give you enough cushion left over. So landlords are going, oh no, rent is $1,700, and that's not gonna, that's not enough cushion. And so we're now seeing this population that's coming into homelessness that's going, man, all I want is somewhere where I can just pay rent and be happy.
Yeah.
And so if I had $1 billion, you betcha, it would be not about creating, a marketplace rent per se, but truly to say, how do we shift this paradigm into affordable housing that our working class and fixed income populations can handle, and keep it there.
Yeah, and I look back in history. I've been listening to a book on tape about what New York City went through around the turn of the century, just the surging population growth they experienced. And in the short term, the slums and the tenement housing solved the problem, actually. I mean, they were horrible housing conditions to begin with, but as people were able to earn enough money to afford a little bit better, and just climb that ladder, and there were no rungs missing from the bottom.
They were earning their stripes, right?
Yeah, I mean, could you go back to like a tenement housing model where you're renting a little room, you don't even have a bathroom,
right,
and you share a bathroom, you share a kitchen until you can save up a little more, get a little bit more skill to get another job.
Which is what a lot of countries have done, right? So when you look at your Scandinavian countries or countries in Europe, they still have that, where you've got this kind of ladder. And they always have kept that low-income housing ladder, where we really lost it in America due to greed. I mean, truly, right? And I'm an entrepreneur, right? Serial entrepreneur. But I still believe that there has to be a level for everybody to start. And we've lost the starting level. $500,000 is not a starting level. $3,000 for a one-bedroom apartment is not a starting level.
Yeah, we've zoned out of existence the tenement housing model.
That's right.
And we've also created this, it's called Euclidean zoning, which is in the suburbs. It's such a wasteful model. Every single home needs to be on an eighth of an acre plot, whereas if you allowed multifamily housing in the suburbs, you could have a ton more housing and a lot more open space. They do it in Europe.
Right.
It's just, it seems like we've kind of gotten off course with housing, and we have a lot of course correction to do to make housing ever affordable again.
Right. It's got to happen.
Yeah. I mean, good luck to your kids, my kids, moving out of the house anytime. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Carol.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great talking to you.
Buy some coffee.
Yeah.
Did I say that already? Buy some coffee. SwitchPointCoffeeCo.org.
Yeah. And plants as well.
Yeah, buy some lettuce. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And our brand new issue, our beer issue, is out. We are going to sample some beer tomorrow. Proper Brewing Company and some other brands. It's a really exciting time to experience the best of craft breweries all over the state of Utah. That's what we do in our current issue of Utah Stories. We've done a beer issue every year for the last, I think, 14 years. So go pick up your issue of Utah Stories, or if you want to subscribe, go to our website, pay just $3 a month, and we'll deliver it right to your house. And it is the best of local Utah, and we're tackling the biggest issues that Utah faces. And if you want to try one, Carol, take it home. Oh, you got one? Great. Shades. All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. All right, we'll call this bonus content. I ran into this other lady today on the Jordan River Trail. Really sad. I want to play this for you. Unfortunately, those of you who are with us live are going to have a hard time hearing this, but we'll play it. What happened to you last night?
I went to sleep and somebody went in the house and stole my backpack that had everything in it. Everything. My whole livelihood.
And this was out of your apartment?
Yeah.
And so now you're going to be evicted?
Yeah, because I needed the paperwork that's in my backpack for the kids that I have temporary custody on. I had to produce that letter, and now they're going to be ended up in state's custody.
How long have you had these kids?
A few months, but I watched over them for about 3 years. They lost their mom a year ago. The 16-year-old, she started getting raped at 9 years old. The 15-year-old got gang raped, and the boy is just barely starting to get it together to where he's finally going to school and stuff. But he'd been abused pretty hardcore too.
Are you certain you're going to be evicted because of this?
The case manager just told me, because when their brother was there, their stepbrother, I mean, he's lived a pretty bad life, and he was causing a lot of hate and discontent, and all these people started coming over and stuff, and somebody tried to come through the window, and they said because of the traffic, and because I don't have that letter, they're giving me a 3-day notice if I don't produce it within 3 hours.
Is this Section 8 housing or?
No, it's through the road home, through the homeless shelters. And needless to say, they've been there for 8 years, and they're finally getting it together just for them to lose what they do have, a support system. You know.
Now wait, who's been there for 8? Okay, let me fast forward to the part about the payments.
A couple other places, because we just got it notarized and everything.
Paperwork redone.
I don't know. They have to do to get their stuff back, and.
Okay, so here she talks about abatements.
And it's just this area. No matter what, I was out here. I got raped 3 times. I lost my ovary. I had to have a blood transfusion, a bone marrow transfusion. I'm in full liver failure. Everything because of these people. And it's all every time there's an abatement. This is what happens. And they don't realize, the city doesn't realize what the hell they're doing when they take all these people's stuff, because 85% of them are mentally challenged. They're going to do whatever they have to do to get their stuff back. And
they just steal from each other and
no, they steal from people. Where do you think they're getting all this shit? Come on, really? They put everybody in danger. It's not just each other, it's everybody. And they don't realize what a hardship it does. And they're just going to go back to the same place. If they help them learn, put garbage cans out or something.
Okay, so at the end of a terrible situation, she's obviously was trying to foster some kids and everything went to complete chaos. But she says every time there's abatements, she sees upticks in crime in the whole neighborhood and the area around because these people have nothing.
You're going to replace it.
They got to replace it. They got to find stuff. They got to find ways to get the resources they need just to survive. So I wanted to have you weigh in on the current abatement policy, which is a terrible word to use.
It is a horrible word. I really struggle with the abatements because I've seen the same thing happen. They finally are getting themselves kind of organized, and they've got this community of people around them. Now, if these camps get too big, then that's where you're seeing some of these things that she was talking about with, rapes and some violence. But some of these smaller camps that have 20 people, man, they're a tight little tribe, and they take care of each other. But when we come in and we throw away everything that they own, they're starting over again, which is why they don't trust anybody in the homeless system. Because now they got to start over again, and it takes a long time to get paperwork, and it takes a long time to regroup and get your certificates all over again, right? And so it becomes very discouraging. And I think a lot of that crime uptick is, oh yeah, we're going to show you, right? You want a piece of this? And so, and we've seen this behavior when we've gone out and talked to people in the camps, when we talked to them at Overflow when they came in and they expressed, guess what just happened to me today? Now I'm here at Overflow, but I have nothing. I don't even have another pair of clothes. This is all I got. I wish we could do the sanction camping. I really do, to where we could step them in and, like I said before, gain that trust, but allow them to bring in their belongings and get organized. And when she's talking about these mental health challenges, it's real. And when people steal or throw away, they come in and they do these abatements and all their meds are gone again. And so here we're doing all these work as case managers, and we're getting people kind of back into the groove of it, and now they just lost the paperwork that just took me 4 months to get, and all the meds that I just got them from 4th Street Clinic. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Here we go again, which costs me as the...
And she says the abatement will often push people over the edge, like they were already psychologically distressed, and then they just get pushed over, and then now you're dealing with somebody who's like a raving lunatic.
Yeah.
And it's just because people can only handle so much.
Oh, yeah.
Till they're pretty much
they can't
just
take it
checked
anymore.
out. And so the abatement policy, it was an emergency measure they took during Operation Rio Grande, and every mayor since Biskupski and Mendenhall have adopted and kept that in place. What is keeping that terrible policy in place?
I don't know, because it hasn't changed. I mean, you can clean up a camp, right? Let's use the word clean up instead of abatement, because it makes me at least not have the heebie-jeebies. But let's say you go in and you clean up this camp, but then all they've done is move 3 blocks up. And we've seen the same people for over a year just move from new block to new block to new block, and then they got to start over, steal some stuff, right? Get their shit together again, and then, when it gets too messy, why are we not just putting out porta potties? I literally saw somebody the other day who had shit their pants because no one, and I was downtown, and I'm watching this, no one would let them use the bathroom. Now, we're all human. We all have to go. But if no business, no gas station will let the homeless in to use the bathroom, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
You can only hold it for so long before your body's going to go, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like, where's the dignity? We have to provide something that says, hey, here's some, showers. Here's some, toilets. And let's work on trying to create a system that they can move out of their situation and not feel like the only option that they have is camping.
Yeah. And it seems like that sort of extreme measure to go in with a front end loader with the cops, taking everyone's things and chucking them, that seems like what you would do in a state of emergency. Why has this state of emergency policy been in place for 4 years now? I just doesn't make sense. And the mayor could stop it right now if she wanted to, right?
Yep.
But I think she would say, I'm just enforcing the no public camping law. And I don't know. But I know that the Salt Lake City Police Department morale is at an all-time low. It's like a lot of these officers are good people. They don't want to be doing this.
They don't want to do it. But I think it has to be, if you're going to enforce it and have it be, you can't camp here, but let me help you and show you where you can camp.
Yeah.
We get it, right? And actually this camp has a bathroom and some showers and a place that you could do some cooking. Would that work out for you? I mean, you have to change the mentality of saying, I don't want you camping in the parks where we're trying, and I just picked up, live over in the Marmalade and by Warm Springs Park, and I just found on Sunday a meth pipe right in the playground, in the lawn. And there was a dad and a little 3-year-old daughter just a little ways away. And I said, hey, be really careful looking around, because there's at least 30 tents up in that cliffside above Warm Springs Park.
Oh, yeah.
And, so I get what we're trying to say is we want clean parks. We want clean cities, right? And we don't want dangerous things if we're using those parks or sidewalks, right? None of us want to be walking down a sidewalk and stepping in defecation. Mm-hmm. But where else can they go? And I think it's our moral duty to say, you can't be here, but how about here? Instead of just, too bad, so sad, start over.
Mm-hmm. or like where they're out of the way and nobody's complaining about them, like that spaghetti bowl area.
Right.
Why not just provide the dumpsters, the porta potties until there is the space?
Right.
I mean, I think the other argument might be, oh, well, then we'll be attracting more people, homeless people from other states and other places. And
you've already got the problem. So the build it, you will come mentality is long flown by, right? I mean, we already have a serious problem. So instead of saying, oh, it'll just attract more, let's deal with what we have in a more humane way. But it also then starts to build the trust so we can get them into a system of housing and mental health help, meds.
Get them back into the workforce.
Get them back into workforce, right? And I mean, we see it happening with what we do. So why can't it be done on a bigger scale?
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate your input.
Nice bonus section.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.